Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Underlords Universe, where we talk all things rock and roll, heavy metal, sci-fi, and horror. In fact, we actually write and record our own music, and we do have a resident author, H. Prescott Lemon, who writes novels in our little publication world. But today we're going to be talking music, a little musical musings, if you will. And the subject is going to be the first six Van Halen records, the David Lee Roth albums. We're going to rate those, going to rank them, discuss them, because it's what we do. It's what we like to do. And before we do that, though, I think we should just do a real brief discussion about our rating system. Brent, do you agree we should give a potential viewer a little lowdown on the rating system?
Yes, I do. And I feel that way because it's very easy for someone to say, this is my favorite album by this artist or this band. Is it really? Is it?
Mm-hmm.
Because I've been doing this in various incarnations over the last 20 years or so, as has Brian. And it's always fun to see what the numbers actually reveal because it's very easy to say, I love this album, it's my favorite. But when you go through our system, you sometimes find that it's not.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you know, and I don't begrudge anybody their own system. But if somebody were to say, well, this album, I'm gonna give it three or three and a half. It's like, well, why? What made you come up to a three or three and a half or whatever? And again, that's fine if somebody wants to do it that way. I always just kind of wondered, well, what is a five? What is a four? What is etc. So what I kind of figured is an album is a sum of its parts, right? So let's say you got an album that has 10 tracks, okay? A five, as we've kind of discussed, a five is one of those songs where even if you're not in the mood, that song just gets you in the mood. I mean that song is like it's a five is one of those songs that's absolutely undeniable. No matter how many times you hear it, you want to hear it again. It's the song you're listening to in the car, and you hit back because you want to hear it again and again. That's a five.
Yep.
A four is a song that oftentimes hits a five, but maybe you have to kind of be in the mood for it to be a five. But you're always like, hey, that's a great song.
Right.
A three that's a solid song. I got no problems with it. It's not the greatest song that band's ever done, but I'm not going to skip it. A two is there might be some things about the song that are okay that you like, but there might be some songs. Maybe it's the chorus that kind of falls out for you, or maybe the verses are kind of stupid. A one is one of those songs where it's like, no, this song is really kind of crappy, all the way around, straight through. And a zero is just abysmal. A zero is one of those songs where you're like, if they played this, if I was at a show and they played this, I wouldn't just run for the refreshment stand. I'd probably just leave the building. A zero is that bad. And then we allow for 0.5. So there's 3.5, 4.5, etc., etc. So that's our basic system, and then we just calculate the total. We divide by the number of tracks to get an average star rating, and then divide by the total number of points possible for a percentage. So there we go. So that's how we do our rating system. And we're going to be doing like we said, the first Van Halen albums, the first six with David Lee Roth. So the way we're going to do this, we're going to go through them briefly, kind of in a chronological order first, and then after the discussion, we're going to recap by doing our actual rankings. So the first David Lee Roth era Van Halen album, Brent, came out what year?
1978.
1978.
February 10th, 1978, I believe.
Yes. And there it is in all its glory on CD. Yes.
Looks a little bit better on yours, but there we go. Yeah. Mine
okay.
a little dark. Right,
yeah.
There we go.
So that album, first of all, we're not going to go through every single track here, but high points, low points. Are there any fives on this album for you? Are there any duds on this album in your mind?
The 5-star songs in this album for me are Running with the Devil, Eruption, I'm the One, Feel Your Love Tonight, and On Fire, which might be my favorite Van Halen song with Dave that they ever did, On Fire. So
Okay.
basically, about half the album's a 5 in my view.
I actually agree with that. I don't give Feel Your Love Tonight a 5. However, all the others I agree with you a 5. And I do agree, On Fire might be one of the best songs ever done with David Lee Roth. That is absolutely on fire.
They were on fire when they did that track.
Yeah.
Undeniably great. And I will say one thing, it surprised me. I'm the One. I don't know that I would have given it a 5. I listened to it again and I'm like, how is this not a 5? How is this not?
Yeah.
So this is a great example of, you go back and revisit the record and you listen to these songs again, and it's like, it's undeniably a 5 in my book. So there you go.
I've always loved that song. To me, you're hard pressed to get better than Running with the Devil. I mean, I love the fact that that's their first song on their first album, and it's just kind of this slow, plodding thing, but it never lets up. It just consistently ramps up, and by the end of it, it's just slamming. Great opening track, but I'm the One and On Fire are the two songs that, like, if I was just forced to pick only two, it'd be those two songs. And I think I'm the One kind of shows like they're not. I mean, first of all, they're coming out when hard rock is at a low point. Second, they're willing to put songs like I'm the One that has kind of that, shooby doo wop stuff in the middle of it, which
is great.
It's just great. But what a band! What a band! And
can I ask you this question? Not to interrupt, I did interrupt, so I'm going to. Would you say that Running with the Devil is one of the great album openers in rock history?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I would too.
Absolutely.
I would too. What a way for them to introduce themselves to the world with that track on this spectacular record.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the greatest debuts of all time.
Okay, well, here's the question. What is the lowest rated song on this album for you?
Well, you're not going to like me for this.
I don't like you already.
I know that. I know. Atomic Punk, I gave that a 2.5 stars.
2.5.
I can feel the hate. I can feel the hate and the judgment. I can feel it.
Well,
so go ahead, hit me with it. Hit me.
Well, here's the thing. First of all, I did rate that song higher than that. Okay, I did. Okay, but here's what I'm going to tell you. I actually agree with you that that's the weakest song on the album. As far as the songs that they composed, the two covers, Ice Cream Man and You Really Got Me, I actually rated lower. Not that they're bad songs. I actually like Ice Cream Man a lot. But just by virtue of the fact that they're covers, it's like, the Kinks, You Really Got Me. It's like, I don't mind the song. I much prefer Van Halen's version. But,
right.
Here's one thing I will say. I did not rate any song on this album below a 3. You Really Got Me. I gave a 3 to. So, that's it's got a few 5s on it. It's a hot album.
Okay, and we'll see where it falls in the rankings here in a little bit.
Yep, we're going to see that. All right. Okay, so moving on, or do you have anything else you want to say about Van Halen 2 before we move, or excuse me, about Van Halen 1 before we move on to Van Halen 2?
No, we can move on to.
Okay, because we will. Van Halen 2.
Move on to it right now.
And what do you remember? Did you have the release date on Van Halen 2?
I do not. Off the top of my head, but I know it's 1979. We know that.
Okay. Right. Okay. Van Halen 2. All right. Okay. I'm going to start by saying this has as many, if not more, 5-star songs in my book. It actually has more 5-star songs based on my rating than the first album. How's that?
It's interesting because I can't say that about this record. However, maybe I like this record even more than Van Halen 1. It's possible.
It's possible if the aggregate...
And maybe more consistent. And consistency does make for a good record.
Yeah. But it could also make for a consistently bad record. It depends on You
But
know,
that's not
but
the
that's
case with
no,
Van Halen too. We know
no,
that.
that is not the case with Van Halen too. Here, okay, so here's my question then for you. Um, I don't know how many five-star songs you have on this album. You haven't said.
I have
Pick
four or
one.
five stars.
You have only
Pick
one.
one.
Pick one of the five-star songs.
Ugh. All right, it's got to be Somebody Get Me a Doctor.
Mm.
There we go. That's a 5-star song.
Okay, what about it is five for you?
Oh geez, just the riff, the chorus, Mikey's backing vocals. Dave's got a little bit of a snarl, kind of as
Mhm.
he's going through the verses. I just everything about that song is just undeniably great. So
Yeah,
it's top shelf Van Halen for me.
I,
So I
I
would say that's the diamond on this record for me would be Somebody Get Me a Doctor.
I agree, and you know, but if I had to pick only one five-star song from Van Halen 2, it would be "Out of Love Again." And you know, it's funny. I've got where is it? Noel Monk, their old manager, wrote this book here. He refers to Alex Van Halen as an average drummer, and I'm like, okay, dude, you clearly know Van Halen better than I do. You managed them for these early years, but come on. I mean, can you listen to Out of Love Again? Can you listen to Out of Love Again and say that's an average drummer? That's a mediocre drummer. I mean, no, it's he steals that song. I mean, that is the best moment I think, perhaps arguably on the entire record, are his drums on "Out of Love Again." I know that's controversial because you're supposed to say, you know, Eddie is, you know, the guy who brings it,
Well,
and he does on the whole
I
album.
think it's very safe and maybe even politically correct to say that Ed is the star of the band, and that Mikey and Dave and Al, they're just kind of average guys. I don't buy into that. These guys, especially early in their career, were firing on all cylinders, and I think every one of them was great. Yes, great at what they did within the context of the band.
And that's the key thing, because I mean, it's not denying the impact that Eddie Van Halen had. I mean, if you had to pick one of those four guys, of course you'd pick Eddie, you know. But let's not take away from what the other guys contribute to the band. So yeah,
Right.
so
So
you'd
I
say
will
you
I
say
will see that I will agree with what you said, and also I would note that on the back of the album, Al is holding like drumsticks that are on fire.
oh
So that kind of goes to what you're saying. Yeah. I mean, there you go.
yeah,
That
and let's check out the pants,
the clothing.
because bottom line, you know, some people say, oh, Van Halen, they were like an 80s hair band or whatever. No, they weren't. That's, I mean, we can have that discussion another time, but no. Okay, what's if you had to pick a low point on Van Halen 2, is there a low point?
Um, Actually, there is for me. It's a very low point. I don't think You're
Ooh.
No Good is a very good song. So You Are No Good. That song is not a good song, and it's also not a good opener. I give that a 2 stars. So far, that's the worst ranking that I've given to any song on either of these albums. Um, it's just too slow, too plodding. It doesn't even really fit in with the rest of the material on the record, which is kind of sparkly and glistening and bright.
Yeah, it's
So I think that's the low water mark on this album.
well, it's a cover, you know.
Right.
It's opening with a cover. Was it Linda Ronstadt? Is that
I
right?
believe it was. I believe it was.
And you know, and it was a hit, you know, but not a hit for Van Halen.
No.
I actually agree with you. I think that the kind of slow, kind of plodding opener on the first album works great for Running with the Devil. I don't think it works great for You're No Good. I agree with you on that. I do like the song, so I don't, you know, I give it a three. But the other,
Yeah, I say when you get into a 2 and a 1, I can say I really don't care for it. I mean, I can listen to it, but honestly, unless I'm going to go through and listen to the whole album, which oftentimes I will do,
Yeah.
That's one I might skip. So I would
Yeah.
say if you give a song a 2, you might skip it.
Well, and the funny thing is that the other, low point for me is Women in Love.
Oh,
And it, it's I just don't think it matches the quality of Women in Love. Really?
oh no, I'm sorry. Women in Love. No, 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 no. You're right. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I'll bet you're thinking Beautiful Girls, aren't you?
Yes, I gave Women in Love a 3. So there you go.
Oh, okay. So I gave Women in Love a 3 as well. I love the intro to it, all the tapping that he
Oh
does.
yes, yes.
Um, but I think as a song, I don't think it's quite up to the rest of them. But but it's a good song. It's nothing. I don't dislike it. It's just not. It's not DOA. It's not bottoms up. It's not somebody give me a doctor level.
No, honestly, I think the tapping, the beginning of Women in Love would have been better before Beautiful Girls. I actually think if you segue that tapping into that song, it works better than the tapping with Women in
mhm.
Love.
Yeah, good point. Good point. The only other thing I want to say, going back to Alex, is Dance the Night Away, which I think is a fantastic song. And when you listen to that song, and they get to that breakdown part where it kind of, you know, lightens
And
up
then
a
builds
little
back
bit,
up that
and then it
part.
builds back up. It's listen to Alex's the feel he has coming back into that chorus, and it's like it's Alex's backbeat and the feel he has that I think makes uh, "Dance the Night Away" work in the end of the song. And so Alex totally overlooked, I think, overshadowed by his brother, but I think he really shines on this album.
I
Um,
agree.
Okay. Anything else on Van Halen 2 that you want to comment on before we move on to VH? I almost said Van Halen 3. That is
We're
not
not going to be talking. We're
that's-
not talking about that album.
no, not in this episode. The third Van Halen album, Women and
Well,
Children.
let's move on to Women and Children first,
Mm,
because that would be the third Van Halen album,
that would be.
1980.
Yep. With,
Yes.
okay. So I'm going to say this. Women and Children First has, out of the 60 tracks recorded by this original lineup of the band, has my least favorite song. Can you guess what it is?
I think I can.
Go ahead. What is it?
Is it Loss of Control?
It is Loss of Control. I do not think Loss of Control. It's funny in a kind of a weird way.
Not in a good way.
Well, it's stupid, I think.
It's stupid.
And I, now, would I prefer that it's not on the album? No, because I
Not.
want everything that they've ever done.
Right.
So yeah, I'm glad it's there. Does it actually improve the album? No. I'm not going to say that it does. I actually, as a matter of fact, Loss of Control is the only Van Halen song on the first 6 albums that I rated below a 3, and I gave it 2.5,
Pretty
partly
good.
because it's so ridiculous that it's like, well, I can't. I mean, I got to give it some credit.
I
But,
give it a 2. So we're
okay.
close. I gave it a 2. We're close.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right.
So what would you say is the high point on this record for you?
Romeo Delight. Romeo Delight. That riff. I mean, I have that riff going through my head right now. And it's one of those riffs that it's just a powerhouse.
If I'm not mistaken, back in the day they opened with that. That was one of their set openers.
No kid. Yeah, I think that's right. Funny enough, "And the Cradle Will Rock" is not one of my favorite songs on this record.
Mine either. Not
I
one
don't
of my favorites either.
I don't dislike the song, but it's not one of my favorites. Romeo Delight is my favorite. I actually think that the last half of the album is the better half of the album. I think that "Take Your Whiskey Home," "Could This Be Magic," "In a Simple Rhyme," I think those songs are great. I
Would
don't,
you have started the album with Romeo Delight and moved in the Cradle Will Rock to a different place in the track listing, or do you think the album still sets pretty well given the way the tracks segue together?
I think it segues pretty well. I can see what you're saying. Romeo Delight would have been a great opener, and the Cradle Will Rock would have been a great second track.
Yeah,
Uh, but I do think that then it might, sequencing the rest of it would be a little weird. I think you needed Romeo Delight kind of in there between Fools and Tora Tora, you know. Well, you know, it, I think the lull in the album would have been too big without it.
yeah, I can
But
see that. I can see that.
yeah, but I think honestly the last three songs on the record, "Take Your Whiskey Home," "Could This Be Magic," and "In a Simple Rhyme," while they may not be top tier fives, I think it's a solid, it's the most solid sequence of the album in terms of three songs in a row.
Yeah, I would say for me, in a simple rhyme, Fools, really good songs.
Mm-hmm.
However, for me, I gave the highest mark to Everybody Wants Some. I think that song is outstanding.
Oh,
Uh, that was for me, that's the high point on the record. But when I went back and revisited this record, I was pleasantly surprised at how much I liked Fools and In a Simple Rhyme, um, and Romeo Delight,
yeah,
and
I
then
think.
how much I didn't like Loss of Control.
Well, it's one of those things where it's like the song,
Right.
but this is if you're going back and saying, okay, well, I have to give it a five, a four, a three, whatever. That's the thing that kind of makes you confront, like, well, how much do I really like the song? And sometimes you end up liking the song more than you realize. It gives it new life, and that
Right.
is the kind of the cool thing about our system. So,
Well, when you go back and listen to things like you were talking about with Dance the Night Away, you talk about how Alex is drumming in a particular part of the song. When we go through these exercises, we actually go back and listen to the records again. So it's a great opportunity to kind of hear things and maybe remember things that you'd forgotten about. Because let's be honest, I probably hadn't listened to Women and Children First in maybe 5 years until we decided to do this. So even though we're familiar with the songs, having a chance to go back and revisit them and listen to them again is great. So
yeah,
this is a lot of fun to do for that particular reason.
right, right. Okay, should we move on to the next Van Halen album in the catalog?
Yes.
Fair Warning,
Yep.
the dark, brooding cover. Um, when we were kids, I used to go to the public library because I didn't have this, um, and used to be able to like get the vinyl. You could check out the vinyl. I had that thick plastic
Plastic with like the little
cover.
card. That's where the card went in, the holder on the front,
Yeah,
right?
so the card was like covering the checkout card.
Yes.
Um, and it's funny if you would ask me before we started this, if you'd said predict what your favorite Van Halen album will be of the first six David Lee Roth era albums, I would have predicted Fair Warning to be the number one.
Me too.
And
I guess we'll see if that's true or not.
whether or
We'll
not, yeah,
find
whether or
out.
not that actually is the case, we'll find out here. But I would have said, Fair Warning. I love Fair Warning. It's the best Van Halen album of all time. Blah blah blah. Right?
Right.
It's got some great stuff. I'm going to go on record here and say, to this day, two of my favorite Van Halen songs of all time, period, hands down, are "Dirty Movies" and "Sinner Swing."
And I'm going to say that
Those
two
are
of my favorites of
fives.
all time, two of my favorites of all time are Mean Street and Center Swing. So there.
Not
So we
Unchained.
do.
Not Unchained.
I think Unchained is good, but I think it's overrated. It's not, to me. It's never going to be top tier Van Halen. I don't. It's just it's a little mundane. It's a little safe. There's
Mm-hmm.
no real super guitar histrionics going on. I,
There's
I
there's some really cool riffing in the verse. I think the verses in Unchained are actually more
yeah,
interesting than the
yeah,
chorus. But
yeah. The choruses are kind of pedestrian. It's just
okay,
it
all
doesn't do a
right.
lot for it doesn't do a lot for me.
Mm-hmm.
I know it was a single and it was a big song for them, but for the record, I gave it 3 stars.
Okay.
So it's a decent song. It's not one of my favorites on the record. It's not one of my favorites in their catalog.
See, and I mean, I see where you're coming from. I gave it 4.5 because I think it's great, but it's not Center Swing great to me, and it's not Dirty
No
Movies great
way.
to me. One thing I
No.
will say is I don't remember who it was. It might have been Rick Beato on Rick Beato's channel, but I think he pointed out on Unchained, if you listen carefully, you can hear in the down picking in the very, very beginning, you can hear Eddie down picking that tick, 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 tick. He's picking
Yep.
so hard he kind of picks it out of tune. It's like you can hear
He
the
does.
notes go sharp a little bit, and that's just cool. You know,
It's so cool that they didn't fix that. It's very subtle. If you listen for it, you're going to hear it, but it's so cool that they didn't fix that.
I'm going to say this: the Dark Horse song on this album is "Push Comes to Shove." That is hot. That
I'll tell you what.
Hot track, man.
I'll tell you what, man. You call it a dark horse. I call it the 5-star song. That's what I'm going to call it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you'd asked me before we did this little exercise, whether I would have given it a 5 stars, I might have said probably not.
Yeah.
Probably not. But you know what? I did. I did give it 5 stars, and it deserves every one of those 5 stars.
Yeah, it's funny because to me, like I said, Dirty Movies and Center Swing, those songs are the ones that go back. I mean, all my life, I've been like, I love those. But Push Comes to Shove, yeah, it's like now it's like on par with those because it's like I've always liked it, but it's like, God, that's actually as good as those other tunes. I will say this: I do think that the whole Sunday Afternoon in the Park and One Foot Out the Door, I think they're cool because it's Eddie kind of experimenting with sounds and
yeah.
But I think that it's kind of like hey guys, we got to end this album. Let's just get this thing over with. And that's the way it feels to me. I'm not saying that's what they did, but that's the way the album feels to me. So it feels like it just tapers off really quickly at the end.
I agree with you because you got 2 songs at the end that are 2 minutes or less in length.
Yeah.
Going back to Push Comes to Shove, Ed's guitar in that song is unbelievable. So smooth, so cool. Did they ever record anything like that again? No, not really. Not that I recall.
Which makes that great. That's why
that song is so special and so cool. And as we're getting deeper into this discussion, you already kind of hinted at it with how you would go to the library to get the record and listen to it at home. You know, going through these albums and listening to the songs, it does bring back a lot of childhood memories, I think, for both of us, and probably for everybody who listens to these records, because you might remember where you were the first time you heard a song or saw a video or whatever. So it's also kind of a chance to go back and revisit some of those moments as well. So that was a good call on your part for talking about the library, because I'd completely forgotten about that. But now that you mention it, I can see that in my head right now. Big plastic around it, the little pocket card.
Like how many times did I go to the library with Mom and come home with that? You know,
a lot,
right?
And now we know why. So you can listen to Push Comes to Shove and Dirty Movies and Center Swing.
Yeah. Not that those are necessarily songs for little kids.
No.
Okay. Perhaps the most controversial Van Halen album of the time, maybe, is Diver Down, which the cover is a flag indicating that a diver is underwater and boats should stay.
I just noticed when I hold my stuff up, is it backwards on camera? Backwards.
No, you're fine. It's good. That's the way it looks to you. Yep. Okay. Yeah. So
controversial. Well,
it's a hodgepodge of an album. I mean, I don't think anybody would deny that. You know, half the album is cover songs, half the stuff seems slapped together. Now, and this is where, you know, albums, it's hard to be completely objective, you know, because this is the second Van Halen album that I ever owned. The first one was 1984, and you know, Grandma got it for me.
Right.
And even as a kid, I was thinking, well, I love 1984. I want to get the album that's closest to it in time, which would have been, you know, Diver Down. And it's so different. But I loved 1984 so much that I was kind of just predisposed to like anything else that they did. So it was like,
Sure.
oh, I'll accept it, whatever it is. I want more Van Halen. So this album's really nostalgic for me. It may not really, it may be in some respects the least of those first six Van Halen records. Um, but it's hard for me to rate the songs on this and separate that nostalgic feel. I put this album on, I feel like I'm 10 years old. So
Sure.
I don't know, what's your high point or low points on Diver Down?
I have a few high points. I think my high points are going to be Hang 'em High and Secrets, which I love,
Yeah.
and the little guitars intro, even though it's like 40 seconds long, it's so cool. Little Guitars is a really good song too, but for me, I would have to go with Hang 'em High and Secrets. I think Secrets is a really, really good song.
Yeah, Secrets is great. The thing is, none of these songs rated as a five for me. None of them are 4.5s or fives. But what I found is that it's consist, even though it's a hodgepodge of an album. To me, it's really consistently good. Um, and I always thought the Full Bug was great. I always thought Happy Trails, even though it's a novelty song, was fun and just really cool hearing them, do that. And I agree with you. Hang 'em High. Hang 'em High is great. I think we talked about before, like uh, near the end of the song when they bring the last verse back, there Alex does this snare hi hat thing back and forth, and it's just like you really, if you zero in on that, it's like once again Alex, really stepping up and playing some really cool stuff. But I agree with you. And frankly, I do like the covers. I do like Dancing in the Street.
I was
Uh,
going to ask you about Oh Pretty
I,
Woman and Dancing in the Street. I
yeah,
think both of those, I love this version of Dancing in the Street. I think it's great.
mhm,
I
yeah,
love it.
yeah, yeah. So I think it's
I don't mind if they're cover songs as long as they're done well.
yeah,
Now, as you said, half the album being cover songs, that's one thing, but um, they're good covers.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. I think it's a solid album. I don't think it's necessarily the greatest thing that they ever did, but I think it's a solid record, and I gladly pull it out and listen to it sometimes. So
yeah, it's an enjoyable listen. It's a
yeah,
fun record. I think that's a good way to describe it. It's a fun record.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. Um, all right. 1984, last album in the original David Lee Roth era.
yeah.
I got my copy right there. Okay. And um, first of all, I want to say that the song "I'll Wait." Most people know this that are Van Halen fans. I think at this point, if you're a deep Van Halen fan, you know this. Michael McDonald co-wrote "I'll Wait," and I learned the story. I read Ted Templeman's book, which I've got over here somewhere. Ted Templeman tells the story of how that happened. They couldn't quite get the song finished. They couldn't really get a chorus. And since Ted Templeman also produced the Doobie Brothers, he took the song to Michael McDonald, and Michael McDonald wrote the chorus to "I'll Wait," I believe. And as far as I understand, he never even met the band. Like it's not like they got together and said, "Hey, let's do a writing session."
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't credit him on the original pressings of the album, and it caused a little bit of a kerfuffle, if you will. And it's just kind of interesting that we're doing this because just a couple days ago, Susan and I went and saw the Doobie Brothers at Wells Fargo Arena just the other night, and they were on fire, so to speak.
and
They
they
were,
did, and they
were
did
great.
not do I'll Wait. But they didn't play I'll Wait, did
No,
they?
no, they did not. No, but
But
Michael,
could you
yeah,
hear Michael McDonald sing the chorus of I'll Wait? I can hear that in my head right now, to be honest with
I
you.
can
If
I
that's
can
true,
hear it.
I
Yeah,
can hear that.
I love that song. I think it's a great song.
I do too.
However, the song, I mean, and it may be kind of the cliche thing to say, but Panama, it's like Panama is one of those songs where as soon as it ends, I go back and hit it again. I want to hear it again and again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Panama is the song that made me say, as a little kid, I need that record. Hey, Grandma, go buy me that record with the smoking baby on it, right?
Right? I mean, yeah, how cool is that? No, I totally agree. It yeah, yeah.
And but it's
Definitely a 5-star song for sure.
yeah, but the whole album is great. I mean, the shuffle in Hot for Teacher, it's like who else is playing rock like that? You know, that I think that's what sets them apart. Is you know, they do these songs that are these shuffles, you know, and House of Pain. I mean,
Oh man.
so here's the question. I mean, it's a great album. Is there a low point? What's the low point on 1984?
There is no low point. If you want to go for a low point, the opener, 1984, but I still gave it 4 stars. The reason I give it 4 stars is because it's the perfect lead into Jump,
Mm-hmm.
which we've heard Jump a million times. I
Mm-hmm.
still think it's a fantastic song. The way this record starts is so perfect, that if there is a low point, it's 1984, but it's not a low point. There is no low
No,
point on this record
no.
for me.
And speaking of Jump, once you get into the guitar solo in Jump, listen to the rhythm, the drums, and and what's underneath the guitar solo,
Oh,
and
it's phenomenal.
try to count it because it's not in four. I don't know what it is, but it's not in four. And then and that also gets back to Alex, and then once the solo section ends and it comes back into that synthesizer part,
Yeah,
that's just hair raising,
it is.
awesome.
And it's interesting that Ed has always kind of dabbled in keyboards, and he's got the albums get a little bit more keyboard heavy as we get further into their career. That arguably their biggest song ever was this synthesizer hit with Jump.
Yeah, which
But
certainly,
like you said, it's such a great solo section that he does.
and Jump alienated a lot of hardcore Van Halen fans at the time, but it brought in a whole bunch of new fans.
Right.
And but you go from Jump. I mean, it's like, okay, so if you're a Van Halen fan at the time and you put the needle on and you're like, oh, it's two keyboards, I don't know about this. What are you going to say when you hear Panama? I mean, that's just slamming. But
Yeah.
my honestly, my low point on the album, as great as it is Top Jimmy.
I was going to say the same thing. I may have misspoke. Technically, I did give Top Jimmy a lower rating than 1984, but
Mhm.
it's hard to say 1984 is a song. I mean, it's an
Track on the
instrumental
album.
piece. It is. It's an instrumental piece which leads off the record, but I would agree with you. Top Jimmy, it might be my least favorite track on the album overall in terms of the songs with, lyrics and vocals and whatnot.
Yeah.
That's not to say it's bad. But when you compare it to like Drop Dead Legs, for me is a deep cut 5-star Van Halen song. The outro of that song is spectacular.
Yeah.
The whole song is great. The
Yeah.
outro with that groove and that chicken picking that Ed's doing, and it's just it's so great. It's so great. So Top Jimmy doesn't live up to that, but by no means does that mean it's not a good song, because it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so here's the deal. I'm gonna take a second here. After having rated each of these songs, we both added them up and divided the totals to get, an average star and percentage ratings. I'm gonna put my albums in order here. And
From number 6
six,
to
yeah,
number 1.
six down to one.
I'll do the same thing.
And I have to admit, I was kind of surprised at the results of this. And disclaimer here, we're rating 6 albums. One of them has to be 6, and one of them has to be 1.
And that doesn't mean we don't like
Um,
all these records. 'Cause we do.
no, I love all these albums. It's just a question of which one do I love more. So,
That's right.
and the thing is, you know, it's like, well, you might say, well, oh, how can you rate that album that way because it has this song on it? Well, keep in mind, you know, a 5-star song can be on an album that's not necessarily as consistent as some of the others. So,
Absolutely.
all right. So my number 6, your number 6 on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Whoa.
So,
Aha.
so we
Interesting.
both. So, Women and Children First comes in at number 6 for both of us. And no, we did not compare notes or talk
Nope.
about this before we did this.
Okay. So
So
number 6.
you want me to go ahead and give? You want to give a percentage or stars, or do you want to? Should we do
Oh,
that
sure.
now?
Yeah, sure.
I overall, so Van Halen, Women and Children First, 3 stars on the
Mhm.
whole, and 66.67%.
Ah, okay.
30 out of 45 points.
I gave it 3 stars for a total of 67.7%. So we were 1% difference in our view of Women and Children First. So Women and Children First comes in 6th. Okay.
It does.
What was your number 5? Whoa. We did
So
not compare notes, people.
Diver Down Diver Down is number 5
Driver
because
down.
something has to be number 5, right?
Yep.
I give this 3.5 stars on the whole. 46.5 out of 60 points for a 77.5%. So considerably better than Women and Children First,
Wow.
but yet
So
it finds itself in the 5 hole.
yeah, and that 3.5-star range is when you break down the percent is a
It's
pretty
big. It's
wide
big.
percentage
It's
range.
big.
Mine was actually 68.3%. So you actually rated it higher on the whole than I did. But in terms of overall stars, it's the same 3.5 stars. Okay. All right. Okay. So 1/3 of this catalog we agree on so far. Okay. What is your number 4?
All right, number 4.
Ready? Ready? Here we go. Ready? Go. What are you doing?
Oh, wait a second. I made a mistake.
Oh, wait a minute.
I made a mistake, folks. I made a mistake, but I can correct it. I
Okay.
just did. I just did my number 4. My mistake. My number 5 was actually Fair Warning.
Oh.
So
Oh.
that
Okay.
makes things even more interesting. I apologize to everybody who's watching because I know there's a lot of people watching this.
Yeah. Okay.
I blew that, but Fair Warning, which before this I thought was going to be my number 1, that came in at number 5. Number
Okay.
5, and that came in at 3.5 stars still because there's that's pretty broad,
Right.
but 34.5 out of 45 points for 76.67%. So very close to Diver Down, but not quite. So
Okay.
Diver Down was my number 4. I apologize for that.
Okay. So my number 4 is Fair Warning. And this is the one that surprised me because I thought this was going to come in at the top or near the top. 4 stars, 76.66 on average. By the way, as far as these percentages go, don't say to yourself, "Oh, well, that's like a C plus." It's not on an A, B, C, D scale. So you and I have the same number 6, and then our 5 and 4 are the same, just in a reversed order. So we agree on the last half. Okay. What is your number 3? Your number 3.
Okay, 1, 2, 3.
Oh,
And
this
this is another surprise. This is
okay.
a surprise.
Okay.
So the debut Van Halen album, as great as it is, in going through this exercise, I came up with 4 stars,
Mm-hmm.
82.73%, 45.5 points out of a possible 55. So it's very solid. As I said before, it's got a handful of 5-star songs on it.
Mm-hmm.
One or two low points might have lowered it a little bit, but again, if you would have asked me before this, where's this going to fall out? I said this is probably top 2, but it's not. It's number 3.
Well, it's funny because your actual star and percentage rating for that is the same as mine. It's just that where it fell relative to my other rankings is different. My number 3 is 1984, 4 stars on average, 81.1%. So my number 3 is 1984. Okay. Your number 2 Van Halen record.
It's
Hmm.
Van Halen 2.
Mine's Van Halen 1.
And for Van Halen 2, I came up with 83%, so it just barely edged out the debut. 41.5 points out of 50 for 83%. Again, if you would have asked me which record do I like more, the debut or Van Halen 2, I probably would have said the debut. I would have been lying to you because
Yeah.
I actually do like Van Halen 2 a little bit more than the debut. Both
I,
great albums, but I like Van Halen 2 just a little bit more.
it's funny. I actually agree with that. If you had asked me which would you choose, Van Halen 1 or Van Halen 2, I would have said Van Halen 1. But after doing after going through them, Van Halen 2 is my number 1 Van Halen album of the first 6
6 would be.
with David Lee Roth. And your number 1 is?
Well, my number 1 can only be what's left for me, and that's 1984, which
Uh-huh.
was a surprise to me. So what are your numbers
And,
on
well,
Van Halen 2?
Van Halen 2, 4.5 stars, 86%. So,
For me, Van Halen, 1984, 4 stars, 88.89%, so 40 out of 45 points.
mhm.
Uh, Again, a little bit of a surprise, but we do love all these records, every one of them for different
Yep.
reasons. But again, I was surprised at that outcome. I really didn't think that album would score as high as it did, but
Yeah.
it did.
Yeah, good chat, good talk. I think that we need to here's what I would recommend as far as the rest of the Van Halen catalog goes. We take there's 4 Sammy albums, 1 Gary Sharon, and then the last one was Dave. So I think we should do the post Roth era next, which would be another 6 albums. Um, and I'm not saying we do it tomorrow, but that would be the next thing we do. And then what we can do is then uh, aggregate the totals at that
Yeah.
point. So let's just do one final recap, holding up our 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1s.
Okay.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Funny thing is that if you split these into 2 tiers, we actually agreed on what 3 albums would be in the top and the other, and I don't want to say lower tier because I love them all, but you get the
Right.
point.
Yeah.
So yeah, hey, here's the deal, folks. If there's somebody out there that actually watched this, give us a like, follow us, ring the little bell thing or whatever it is, make a comment, tell us what you think. Maybe we said something stupid.
Maybe.
Engage a little bit. But at any rate, we're gonna close this out by just letting people know if anybody's watching that we write and record our own stuff. We do it under the name Underlords of the Overworld, which is basically kind of a nice way of saying nobodies. An underlord is the opposite of an overlord, so to speak. And we have primarily we started as an instrumental outfit, writing and recording instrumental music because we couldn't find a singer, and as it turned out, we had a hard time keeping a drummer too. So we have CDs, and the turmoil in trying to find people to round out the band, inspired our bass player to get in touch with an author that he knows very well,
Very well.
named H. Prescott Lemon, and he drafted an entire series of fabulous novels. About 1% of it is true, and about 99% of it is utter hooey.
Yeah.
And
there's some good-looking guys on those covers there.
oh,
you know,
there are. I mean, yeah.
yeah.
And the fun thing about it is there's all these fictional bands and artists in it and stuff. And so we also did an album representing all the different fictional bands that are in the stories, and that's this album here. And then we did an album. It's an instrumental album, but it's based on musical themes that we wrote to accompany the four kind of antagonists that are in this story here. And you can check us out at underlordsuniverse.com.
And would you agree, Brian, that in summing up, that it's fair to say that as we go through these excursions and revisit these albums, that listening to bands like Van Halen when we were young and in our formative years and whatnot, that's one of the reasons why we do what we do. It's because we love this music. These guys are one of the reasons why we've been doing this, toiling in obscurity for some 30 years.
It's doing things for it's doing the stuff just for the love of doing it, and at the same time trying to produce stuff that we ourselves would actually like to listen to, or that we would actually like to read, and that means we actually take a lot of care and time to try to do it right. And now most people don't have CD players anymore, but we are on Spotify and Bandcamp. Underlords of the Overworld. We'll link stuff below in the YouTube page as well. And also there are an expanded Underlords Universe. It's not just about music. There's the OAO series as well, which is a quirky occult lover's paradise. So at any rate, we'll put some links in there. Feel free to check us out if you're interested. There's ways to procure the stuff if you'd like. But until next time, I guess that's all I have.
And we'll come back and we'll do the next round of Van Halen. We'll get on that.
We'll do something. Yep, we'll do something. Okay. Until
thanks, Brian. Thanks, Brian.
Yep. See ya.
See ya.
Bye-bye.